Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Full Quota Podcast. My name is Mpho and Tim. I've got Tim Lace here. As we always do it, we talk all things South African cricket. Last week we spoke about the SA auction. Lots of comments from you guys. Some of them saying we don't know what we're talking about, defending your guys, telling us about other people. Well, that's good. That's the engagement we want to see. So please do bring it on. This is another one. And most importantly, it is the India versus SA T20 series preview. India are currently locked in a battle with Australia. Cameron Green is opening for Australia. It's actually quite interesting to see how teams are. And based on last week's press conference, we're going to touch on a little bit coming in here. South Africa are going to be trying not to show their cards, to try and see what combinations work best. There's a lot of questions I think that squad has, and Tim and I are here to talk about it. But before we continue, remember, please do support us by subscribing to the One World Sports Radio channel, following us on the various social media platforms, as well as all our audio platforms. We've got an audio podcast out, so if you don't want to see our lovely faces, but want to listen to us, maybe you're driving or whatever it is, you can do that through Anchor Podcast or as well as the Apple Podcast and Spotify. So we're all there, we're ready to go. So, Tim, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Sort of T20 series has sort of come up as a bit of a surprise. I suppose I was always focusing on the domestic front because the domestic season started. So this sort of series is it's always been there. It's always been on the schedule, but it has sort of caught me a little bit by surprise.
Well, look, I think the World Cup's caught everybody by surprise, but we did do a World Cup preview show. And so now we've arrived at this point because now South Africa, on the one hand, have so much going on for them in T20 cricket. ODI cricket, not so much. Test cricket after the English season, you're like, maybe this team's a little bit too high than we expected, but we'll go with it as much. But then obviously Mark Boucher is leaving, so this is the final series under Mark Boucher reign. It's also a T20 and a ODI series, and we know what's going on with ODIs. Mark Boucher's blaming injuries. He's like, every series we've had, we've missed out on a key player through the injury, and that's why we're not winning and beating teams, but that's okay. But this one is the one where he's gotten right, and rightfully so. He got the Mumbai Indians job, I would assume, on the back of these types of performances. What are you expecting from the Proteas going into this T20 series?
I'm expecting a better performance with the bat the last time we were there. We were there in June, if you remember, and to a large extent, although the series was drawn, if I remember correctly, the batsman who I think will do well in this series didn't do well. If I'm not mistaken, Quinton de Kock, Reeza Hendricks, and Temba, their strike rates were all under 120. The averages were all around 15, 16, 17. So they will all want to prove a point with the World Cup just about the corner for various reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into.
I think there's a stat that speaks of Temba's strike rate in 2022 at 106 and Quinton's one at 108. But this brings us to the start of the question, because there's four guys who could potentially open: Temba, Quinny, Reeza. You could open with Riley Rousseau. Obviously, with the injury to Rassie van der Dussen, Riley could move into that number 3 slot and make it his own. But even then, Temba and Reeza could also fit into that number 3 slot. Your two openers who will... So here's the problem. You've got a captain, a man who's been in the team for close to 10 years, a guy who's just found form right now but has never been in and around the starting 11 in Reeza, and a guy who's been a T20 mercenary, has been knocking the ball around the world and batting at a high strike rate. And those two latter names are the ones who are currently in form and possibly the best options to open. But one's the Temba's still captain and he's coming back from injury. Quinny's on form, and a lot of coaches could defer to, let me give my guy, my game player, my match opener for the chance. Where do you sit on this? Who are the two openers that you'd like to see? What's the issue here in terms of these four names?
This is a difficult one. For me, Temba's there. So it's one position. Temba is your captain. Temba's come back to form, assuming he's 100% fit, which I assume he is because he's in India, so that should not be a problem. So for me, he opens, not only on those reasons, but also because that's where you get the best out of him. You get the best out of him at the top of the innings. His strike rate there is actually better than his career strike rate. So for me, that's a nailed-down situation. Then it starts to get very tricky. The leading run scorer in T20 cricket for South Africa this year is Reeza Hendricks. He has scored more in this year than any other South African batsman. He is striking it at 140, which again is another tick. I've been on this podcast saying that his strike has been a problem. He's fixed that. He's fixed that problem. Then, so for me, if you're picking along form and on Temba as captain and where he gets his best runs, I would go with those two. The problem you have now is you picked Riley Rousseau in the squad. You're probably going to want to get him in to the 11 if you can. You probably, because he is a very explosive player. He has that ability to score 50 or 16 balls. I think that they will prefer to bat him at 3, but because of our middle order, which we will get into, I think the middle order is actually full. I think there is actually not a place for him at the moment. So he's probably going to be the one that's going to miss out slightly. The other one was Quinton. Now, Quinton's runs had fallen off a cliff. Quinton had gone to the 100 to try and fix that. It didn't improve. He and Riley had appalling hundreds. Their averages were, if I'm 15 and 16, their strike rates were under 120. This is a 100 competition where you literally have to go from ball 1. There is no getting in period. What is on Quinton's side is he has found form in the Caribbean Premier League over the last 6 weeks or so. He is now striking it at about 130. His average there at the moment is 44 in the competition. So he has found form, but he's found form batting at number 4. Not always, but more often than not, he's been batting at number 4 for his Caribbean Premier League side. So if I'm going ahead, I'm going with Temba and I'm going with Quinton.
Is there a world? Yeah. Is there a world where? Because let me start with this before people jump on my head. My starting 2 is Temba and Quinny, and my 3 is Riley. I love Reeza. I'm thankful that he's on form, but essentially that's where I'm sitting because Aiden has to bat at 4. David Miller has to bat at 5. I'd like David Miller to bat at 4, but I'm okay with that 4-5. And then Tristan Stubbs at 6, and they all rotate, and that's my 6 going into the World Cup. Is there a world where you could, don't kill me now, everybody, do not kill me. Think about this, alternative universe. You have that Lions pairing opening with Temba and Reeza, and Quinny batting at 3.
It's possible.
Should.
It's possible.
But this is the time to try it, right? So Mark wants to try combinations. There's 2 things you're looking for, right? To confirm whether Quinny's form is not his comeback to form is not an aberration, or it's not like a once-off event. So my assumption would be I'd play Quinny. I'd first a T20, which is on Wednesday. I go Temba, Quinny, Riley, and then everybody else. If Quinton's form is true and he scores like a 70 or a 50 at about 130, 140 strike rate, you have the wicket keeping issue. Because I'd be like, take Quinny out, but then you then if you take Quinny out, you've got so that presents the other problem for South Africa is that should you drop Quinton de Kock, you have to bring in Heinrich Klaasen. His replacement isn't a wicketkeeper. So scrap that. But here's the option, right? If Quinny's form is great, could you not then drop Quinny down to 3 and possibly even give an Aiden Markram the rest? Because we all know what's going to happen with Aiden Markram, or potentially Tristan Stubbs. Because there's a realm in which Mark even noticed that. See, Mark said the world hasn't seen Tristan Stubbs yet. So there's a possibility where you're like, maybe I should hide him like you did in India, right? Or play around with that middle order. So maybe David Miller doesn't play, but you let Riley play and Riley bats at 4. And you give Riley that opportunity to be that middle order cover, but also give him a chance to try see if he can't actually cement his place as a 3. Or in that world, Quinton bats at 4, Aiden out, and you have Temba, Reeza, Quinny, Riley, and Quinny in that order. But that's how I'm thinking about because you don't want to. It's 3 games. Here's the problem, right? Mark's like he doesn't want to give out his cards, but you've only got like 3 ODIs plus warm-ups, 3 T20s plus warm-ups. So what are we trying to see here? I'd be okay with running with my 11. Nothing's going to change. It's not like, but look, if he wants to try things and look for combinations, maybe play all 4 of them and see what will happen. But that's essentially where I'm at right now. I'm very comfortable that those behind Quinny and Reeza, Quinny and Temba are on form. That should there be, and heaven help me, a situation where we have to drop one of them in the middle of the tournament, that we know that somebody is going to be fixed. So I'm okay with that, but I'd like to get all 4 of them an opportunity to bat, which might mean one of a David Miller and Aiden Markram or Tristan Stubbs has to sit out, which is a problem in itself because, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But let's move on to the next one. The other question we have was who's the all-rounder? Who's the guy who comes in at number 7? Is it Pretorius or is it Parnell? In India, we saw Pretorius batting at number 4 in the pinch hitter role that he did for the Pal Rocks. Yes, the Pal Rocks, not the Pal Royals, the Pal Rocks in the MSL 2.0. He would come in as a pinch hitter in the first 6 overs. That kind of failed badly. But Pretorius' batting has been on a decline over the past couple of years, but it hasn't been bad enough for him to drop as the number 1 all-rounder, because when we looked at batting all-rounders, he was the number 1 in the country. And then all of a sudden, Wayne Parnell came back. And everyone was like, this is interesting. This guy also bats. This guy also bowls too. He bowled pretty nicely, a little bit quicker than Dwayne. Similar skill set, and we all have a fascination with left arm quicks of late because of Marco Jansen. Where do you see this one going? Because I'm Team Parnell. I'm in Camp Parnell. I think Dwayne's really great on Indian pitches as a bowler. He can give you something as a batter, but he was never, ever at that Chris Morris level with the bat. But then you get Wayne Parnell, who is there at that Chris Morris level and possibly even better. May not be a bigger power hitter than Dwayne Pretorius, but Wayne can score runs. Where do you sit here?
Yeah, I think Bouch is Team Pretorius. I do. I really think that Boucher and Karen and the selectors are Team Pretorius. There's a reason why they have moved him. I think they've shelved that idea, but there's a reason why they tried him at 3, because they want to keep him in the side for as long as possible. They see him as an X factor. They see him as a guy that can clear the boundary. They're worried a little bit, I think, with the KG, Lungi, Shamsi, they're down the order. They're worried about that. They want to have guys at 7 and 8 who can clear the boundary, which is also why Maharaj is in the squad, I feel. Maharaj is not a great batsman, but he clears the boundary. He can find.
Well, then in that case, pick Mpho 10. Bjorn's a better guy who can clear the boundary than Cash. Okay, we've seen improvements in Chike's game, but
yeah, much the same between those two. But I think that's where they're thinking. What is in Parnell's favour is he's something different. He's something different in that bowling setup. Not so much the batting. I think he's better than people think, and they need to look back at his T20 league stats. He is much better than people think in terms of the batting. But it's his different, and it's his different. Not just the fact he's bowls left arm, but it's his variety. So he's got a couple of slower balls. He's very effective at sort of middle overs, stopping people score runs. Even in that series against India in June, his economy was around 7.5. Pretorius was over 10. Now that might come into play. I would go Parnell. But then, I think they're going towards Pretorius though.
Tim, is another alternative unit? Is there a world? And I'm a fan of this. I'm a proponent of this. In T20 cricket, you should have your 3 out-and-out bowlers who should not be required to hold the bat. For me, my 3 out-and-out bowlers are Shamsi, KG, and one of Anna and Lungi. That's it. I don't need... If they come into bat, know that we've lost the game, and I'm happy to lose the game in that situation, even if we need 4 off 1 ball or 6 from 6. I'm okay with that. Okay, not 6 from 6. But yeah, if KG comes into bat, or Lungi, or Anna... I'm sorry, or Shamsi, they don't require. So those are my 3. But then 8 and 7, is there an argument, especially in Australian conditions, to have both Pretorius and Parnell?
Yeah,
as your 5, knowing you've got Aiden Markram as your 6th bowler, and Reeza Hendricks as well, if you want to try Reeza.
When we were preparing for this podcast, I was sort of touring with that idea. I was thinking, look, it's Australia. I know it's T20 cricket, and I know they love their spinners, and spinners are very effective. But how effective is Maharaj going to be in Australia? I love Cash. I really do. I really like him. I can't countenance not playing Shamsi. And for that factor, I can't see a particular game when you go in with the both of them. I don't think that's the route they want to go, but I think it's if they look up the particular matchups with a particular team, maybe a team like New Zealand, where they feel that they can get the edge, they might go in with the 2 all-rounders. But I think it'll be a specific game rather than going with the 2 all-rounders as a game plan, so to speak.
So from my idea around this was, obviously you spoke about getting batting between 7 and 8, some good batting. Both of these options that we have on the screen right now are better than Keshav.
Yeah.
Regardless of what you're losing. And that's what T20 is. It's a give and a take. It's a sacrifice. We spoke about that in the auction, So you choose one side at the detriment of another. You choose to pay somebody more, whatever it is. And now this is where, and I've always known, and my biggest criticism around Mark was he was never willing to try and be able to be creative around this axis. He never wanted to give up enough of his bowling in order to get something on the back end of a T20 when we were so reliant on six batters. If you're 50 for 3, it's game over. But if you're 50 for 3 with these 2 in, still yet to come in, it's not necessarily game over, and you've got 10 overs left. These 2 can carry you, and they can give you something and give you a respectable score. And then on top of that, they're not that bad with the ball that they're going to necessarily be hit out the park. And if they do, you've got the 6th option in Aiden. And so that's always been my thing about it is what do we want out of our number 8? Andile is no longer in the squad because he couldn't bat. So if that's the criteria at 8, then find someone who can bat and can give you something with the ball, whether it would spin and pace. And so the options here should have been, and I'm assuming when they're doing the World Cup, it's Pretorius, it's Parnell, it's Linda, and it's Maharaj. And I understand Keshav made it in because you can put him in as an out-and-out bowler. But from a batting perspective, those are the 4 guys that I'd be looking at. But those 2 that we have on the screen are better. George Linda is better than both of them from a batting perspective. Yep. But as a bowler, the gulf is too high, is too wide.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm at. And I'm like, I wouldn't mind seeing both of them in India. But I'm obviously understanding we're playing in India, so we're not going to see. I don't think we'll see this. The only way we can see this, and this is the other side of the creativity, is if you drop one of your quicks. So you don't go in with 3 quicks. You go in with one of these guys as your quicks, and then you can carry Maharaj as your 9, which is he's a very good 9, but I don't need Kesh to bat. But that's where I'm thinking around these 2. Who do you want to see get an opportunity? There's only 3 games. How do you split the opportunities for them at 7?
I'd like to give Parnell 2. We know what Pretorius offers. We know what he does. We know what he offers. He's done it for South Africa on a handful of occasions. He's a solid 7, Pretorius. A solid 7 out of 10. Never lets you down. Parnell, we know what he's done in the past. We know that he's got talent. But it's a very different character at the moment. Very different, far more mature than he was when he left South Africa. So I would like to give him the first 2. It's a good point that you make. We've actually got 5 games. We've got these 3 in terms of the T20 World Cup focus. These 3 20s, and they're the 2 warm-up games. So we've got 5 games. So I would
but
like
those don't really matter. Does Rassi's 100 even count?
Hey?
Those don't even matter. Does Rassi's 100 even count in that Pakistan game?
No, they don't count in terms of that, but they count within the context of the World Cup 11.
Of the preparation. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Sure. Okay, cool. Then I think for me, okay, so which 2? 2 at the front or 2 at the back?
What do you mean?
So you want to give Parnell 2 and Pretorius 1? So
yeah,
which 2?
I would play Parnell these 2 games. These first 2.
Okay, first 2.
I'd say right.
Okay.
Parnell, you got 2 games.
Another question, I want to keep with the button. We'll go back to the batting. 2 questions actually. One is Shamsi's form. Strike rate 9.3 in 2022. He is South Africa's number 1 bowler in this format from a wicket-taking perspective in the squad. Where do you... Shamsi, because it feels to me, Tim, is that we're moving towards a Keshav solution. We're moving towards that we're okay because this guy we've forgotten what this guy has done pre-2022, and we're back to the fat shaming, which is no longer valid, and of Shamsi, and then calling him whatever names because of the fact that now he's actually going at a high economy rate. I know the world's caught up with him, but is he still South Africa's best option of taking wickets from a spin perspective?
Undoubtedly. His, as I said, his economy of 9.3 is the most expensive of his career. That is a fact. So he is getting smacked around. He actually talked about this in a little clip in a press conference just before we went live, and he mentioned the fact that it didn't bother him. It doesn't bother him that he goes for a couple of sixes and an over. It's all about rhythm. It's all about sitting up the batsman. It's all about learning from the experience. Throughout his international career, he's constantly learned. So when he started, he tended to bowl a couple of poor balls and over when he first came into the South African setup. You knew as a batsman, you just waited, and that ball tended to go out the park. But this is a very different Shamsi. This is a Shamsi that knows his game. He knows what's required. He knows his role within the team. He knows it's to get wickets. He still gets a lot of wickets. In terms of wicket taking, that has not diminished in any way, shape, or form. So the fact that he's getting smacked around a bit more than normal doesn't worry me. It might happen again in this series against India because India have been doing that at the moment against Adam Zampa. So that doesn't surprise me. Also because the grounds in Australia are going to be big. They're going to be, they're the biggest in the world. So bring it on. If they want to have a go at him, that's fine. I'm backing him to. If he gets guys caught in the long-on boundary or square leg boundary, that's fine by me. So it's not a worry. But it is a fact.
But where do you put the economy rate? Keshav had a much better. Where do you put Keshav's economy rate against Shamsi's in terms of their importance? Because it feels to me that South Africa is more important about having a spinner who can hold up an end than a spinner who can take up wickets. It came through in the auction a little bit more when you saw teams going for spinners who don't take wickets, and because we always know that wrist spinners are at a premium in T20 cricket, and it'll be a sad day to watch a South African team, and this is my thing, to watch a South African team going with Kesh at the World Cup. Because it feels as though we're going down that route of you could possibly have Kesh because of the batting, and then Shamsi doesn't play and you play Markram. Is there room for both of them in the side? And how does that work out?
I think there's room. I think there's definitely room for the both of them. I obviously pitch dependent and everything. I'd be surprised if both of them don't play throughout the series in every game. I'd be very, very surprised. Mark Boucher has pretty much said that the game plan is the two spinners, and he's said that for a while now, that the game plan is the two spinners. Look, we've been here before. We discussed his inclusion back into not back in, but into the T20 squad. It was a bit of a shock. It was a bit of a surprise. I mean, wonderful cricketer, but it didn't really fill me with much excitement. Him back at the side. It just felt, as you said, it felt like this is a conservative step. We're worried about Shamo. If he has a bad couple of days, we have to get somebody who can hold up an end, and then KG and Lungi will be our premier bowlers who will get the wickets. They do have a partnership. They do work well. That is true, but it does worry me that when you look at other guys that haven't had a go, George Linder, for example. George Linder is not a defensive spinner. He doesn't get a massive amount of wickets like Shamo, but he isn't a hold up an end kind of guy, which is what Keshav does, especially in T20 cricket. He holds up an end, keeps things economical. It tends to be under 8 and over, which is fantastic. But I do wonder with the T20 World Cup whether that will last. We'll see. But it is certainly the game plan that they're going with, the two spinners. As I said, when one of them doesn't play, I think not necessarily that it's wrong, but something's gone wrong. If one of them doesn't play, something's gone wrong, because this has been their game plan for 12 months now. And to change your game plan...
Even in Australia?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. I think that they will want to play both of them. As I said, I can see both all-rounders, Parnell and Pretorius playing, but I'd be surprised if South Africa went that way. I'd be surprised, just with the utterance that are coming out, I'd be surprised if that was what was coming out. Coming in the World Cup, but we'll see. We'll see. I could be wrong.
Look, I want 2 spinners. Preferably, I'd like a leg spinner as well with Shamo. So it would have been interesting to see if I know guys don't. I know Sean Fonberg hasn't done much in T20 cricket, but he still bamboozles a lot of domestic cricketers. But we don't have any other leg spinners in the country to kind of throw into the mix, and that's the worry post this World Cup, and we'll worry about it post the World Cup. But for me, I want both my spinners to be my attacking option. Even if because like off spin is like the most vanilla form of spin, even left arm spin, and so there isn't much that you can do. Obviously, the left arm spinner takes the ball away from the right hander, so you can get that semblance of leg spin, but it's all like conditions based, where you need to hope that the ball's turning, the pitch is conducive to that. Whereas like with the leg spinner, then the art itself lends to consistent ball being taken away. So for me, that's something that I think Safi needs to look into. One other bowling thing before we move over to the biggest question, or the biggest one we're going to have, the death bowling. Obviously, you've got Anrich there, you've got KG, you've got Lungi. Who are your 2 starters, and who's bowling at the death for you?
Oh, this is a toughie. So Lungi is bowling both ends, definitely. Lungi is starting and is finishing.
Okay.
I definitely think that's going to be the...
So then where does this put Anrich?
Anrich is out for me. If I'm picking the 11 tomorrow, Anrich is out. Even though the wickets, the pitches at the grounds in Australia are massive, and that should help him, I just think he's a little bit samey in this format. He's just a little bit samey. He doesn't have enough tricks of the trade in this format at the moment.
Even the 150. So for this series, do you rest KG and play Lungi and Anna? Or like who's the guy? Who are the 2 that are going to get most of the reps?
I think you're probably going to rest KG the most out of this series, I think. So I think you're gonna. If I'm going KG and Anna, then it's gonna have to be between Anna and Lungi, and Lungi. So I'm gonna say to them, boys, it's between you 2, one of 2. I'm not gonna play all 3, so one of 2. You guys are gonna do it. Look, if Anna bowls brilliantly at the death, not so much at the start, bowls brilliantly at the death and causes all sorts of problems, that really creates a headache, because that's a problem where we have had. We have struggled at the death.
To bowl Yorkers.
We really have. So for me, at the moment, at the death, it's Lungi and it's Parnell. If they play Parnell. Those are the
if
key
they
guys
don't
for
play
me.
Parnell,
then it's going to have to be Anna and Lungi at the death.
Look, he hasn't been on form since that injury. He's slowly coming back. He's cranking up the pace, bowling at 150. Because that's my only other thing about this series is 150 is 150 on any pitch. Doesn't matter with the slow flat, whatever it is, it's 150. And so
True.
That's why I would be leaning towards Anna. But I get your point on Lungi. I just want that, because I know if I've got KG, that's my one guy bowling at the death. And if we've got either Dwayne or Wayne Parnell, and in this situation, I'd want Wayne. So it'd be Wayne and Gachiso at the death, and then Anna to dominate at the front. And yes, it's 150, and yes, it can fly. But grounds are big, and he is very deadly at 150, so I'd want him there. But for this series, I'd still want to get Anna and Lungi as many reps as possible to get them on form, because we know what KG can bring and we'll know what KG will give us. And then it's just essentially managing the injuries, managing the loads, and everything else. So I think for this T20 on Wednesday, we're probably going to have to go see Anna and Lungi there. But I just want someone to bowl a Yorker. I just want consistent set of Yorkers, please, guys. That's been my issue for this team. It's could be the difference between winning and losing. Finally, Stubbs. Tristan Stubbs came on to, like, I think he's striking 160. He has the ability to change the way in which teams view South African cricket. They did ask Mark Boucher about him. He kind of was coy. He's like, he doesn't want to play him too much. He doesn't want to show his hand too early, like he's a poker player. But there's 5 T20s. When I look at Australia, and no, not Australia, when I look at us in Australia, this guy needs to have as many reps as possible. He needs to fail as much as he can. Even in the series, he needs to. If he fails, that's fine. But you need him to go through his learnings in an expedited way in this series. I need him to play all 3 games. I also need him to play the warm-ups because I need Tristan Stubbs to understand and see the different facets of world cricket, to understand how this game is played, to go through his disappointments now. I don't want Tristan Stubbs on day 1 or in the World Cup with us knowing that we need him. Because knowing this team, especially that top 6, they've all been to a World Cup. They've all failed. They've all seen the disappointment. So if we find ourselves 50 for 3 and Stubbs is in, and now we're expecting Stubbs to hit 100 or, I don't know, 40 or 60, and the guy doesn't do it, or he doesn't do it consecutively, what does that do to his mental makeup? So I'd rather him do it now. I'd rather him go through it now, go through those processes, refine those processes, and get him in there. He's my number 6 at the World Cup. He's penned in. Obviously, the captain's the first name on the sheet. The second name on the sheet is Tristan Stubbs. Everybody else comes in after that. For me, he is the X factor. He is the game changer. He is everything that this World Cup campaign rests on. If he plays well, South Africa win the tournament. But I need him to play in these next 2 T20s.
Yeah. I agree with I agree with everything. Now, it's not exactly the same, but because he's not in the Australian T20 World Cup squad at the moment, although I think that's going to change. Cameron Green.
Oh, Lord.
Okay, so Cameron Green. So
but he opened
Cameron Green,
yesterday.
I had a quick look at Cameron Green. As far as I can tell, and I looked at these career T20 fixtures. I looked at Shield cricket. I looked at grade cricket. As far I could not find a single game where he opened the batting. Not a single game. Now he's batted from 3 all the way down to about 8 in his career so far. Australia very obviously know that Finch is coming to the end. They want him there for the World Cup. They know he's coming to an end, but they said to Cameron Green, you are the future. You open and you go from ball 1. We don't care if you fail. You go from ball 1. Now, he's been dropped in the series against India a couple of times. He has hit balls in the bottom of the bat that have somehow gone for 6. He has bludgeoned his way through 50s. There have been innings that have been where he's timed everything in the middle of the bat and they've gone miles. And it's been a resounding success. Not every innings has been a resounding success, but the whole picture has been a resounding success. They know that he is the future now. They know that he can do it at the top level in T20 cricket. They can see that. They've seen it. He started against a very, very good Indian team in India. Stubbs needs to do the similar. When Stubbs needs to come in at 6, he needs to be told, particularly in the series, go big. If the ball's in your area, hit out the ground. If he makes 12 of 2 and he gets out, that's fine.
That's fine.
As you said, failure is fine, but you have to stick within that frame mind. Your job is to get 30 or 15.
Are we not putting pressure on him? Because that's my other worry, right? Is that he's young. Scars develop very quickly. Are we not putting a lot of pressure on him? And is there not a situation where obviously this is short notice, but where we can find a way to ease him in. So, for
Well, the
instance,
thing
Heinrich
is,
Claessen's on form, so Heinrich
yeah,
could bat at 6. Is there
no,
a case for that?
no. With the World Cup around the corner, look, Stubbs has done it. Stubbs has done it wherever he's been. He's done it. He's done it for the Warriors. He's done it in every competition, every place that he's played. He's shown. He did it in England. The English folk were all over his exploits in the T20 series. They can see the talent. So it's not that he can't do it. It's that he can do it. His role just must be 100% clear, and it must be 100% backing. So if he makes 12 of 2, so well done, fantastic. And if he makes 50 of 30, fantastic. It must be the same communication. If he makes 12 of 2, don't go, that was a waste of time, why did you get out? It must be the same thing. It must be, well done, you've done exactly what I asked you to do. It didn't work out for your 12 of 2, that's fine. That doesn't matter. It needs to be, the communication has to be clear. That in his role is to hit the ball out the park. That is his role.
Okay. Tim, before we go, one final thing. T20s are Wednesday. I start on Wednesday and they go for the next week. What are you expecting? What do you want? What's the one thing you're looking to see from the Proteas team?
I'm looking to see a much better batting performance than we saw in June. We need to see. It's very much unknown. The three grounds that we are playing at, we've never played before. They have been 6 T20s in total. So it's a very, very much uncharted territory for both teams, really. India have only won 50% of those games there in all three grounds. So it's very difficult to say from that point of view. But you would like to think that we'll be better with the batting. You'd like to think we'll be looking at 170 plus. Totals of that ilk. With our top 6, you would like to think that would be the case. I think there are problems with the Indian bowling at the moment. Certain individuals are not quite hitting their straps. If you look at the Australian series, Bhuvi Kumar, Bumrah was poor yesterday. So, their bowling to me is not 100% nailed on. Ours is. I don't think theirs is 100% nailed on as to who they're going to pick. So, we have to be better with the bat. We have to be more attacking. We have to be more progressive. We have to be more willing to take risks. We had Grant Rulofson, a couple of days ago when we chatted to him, and he said the English approach is taking risks. We have to be like that. We have to take risks rather than work our way to 140 plus.
Look, I just want an improvement in the fielding. I think that's where where all our troubles stem from, especially from a batting perspective, from a game perspective. Batting, as you said, is really important, and I'd like to see a little bit more aggression from the approaches. I think for me, that's essentially, especially at the top, looking to get Quinny back in, and if Quinny and Temba can build partnerships, build a foundation, makes life a little bit easier for everybody else. And so that's what you want. You want them to survive those first 5 overs, 6 overs without a little damage, but set something up. You gotta make use of the power play. In South Africa have always been a overs 10 to 20 team rather than overs 0 to 10 team. So you want to just manage that a little bit more. Obviously, better fielding is something for me that's paramount. You need to be the best fielding side in the world. I'm worried about Mark Boucher leaving this being his last tournament. They did ask him in the press conference, how does that, will players just chill? Because they know Mark's not going to be there and someone else is going to be coming in. We still need to talk about that, but that's going to be quite an interesting thing to see how that dynamic goes. But if the fielding is poor, we're not winning the World Cup. We're not. They need to field well. That's the calling card of South African cricket ever since we've come back from readmission. That our fielding standards have to be back at those standards. I don't like going to the World Cup being the number one side or a feared side, but we are. So maybe do show India that. Obviously, the venues we're playing in are a little on you. So let's and it gives. I think it'll give everyone good preparation, because at the World Cup sometimes you arrive at new venues, and remember at the start of the last World Cup, they didn't know what score would work against Australia. Let's hope that that's a little bit better now. That they arrive on Wednesday and they have a sense, even the first few overs, as to what the number should be. So I think for me, just be buttoned up, and that's what fielding kind of gives you. Because if you come into this series buttoned up, and then you go into Australia buttoned up, it gives you every opportunity to win that tournament, and that's what we want. So Tim, look, let's close it out. Any final words? Any things that you'd like to see? Obviously, there are the squad that's there is the World Cup squad. So if guys are going to be asking about Marco Jansen, he's not going to play. He's a traveling reserve. Any other words?
We will delve into the ODI squad series later, because that is slightly different. But this is World Cup preparation. This is it. This is World Cup preparation, knowing your best 11. I think we know our best 11 pretty much. As you said, Mark Boucher wants to try a few combinations. I hope he does. I hope he does try different combinations. Everybody gets a chance to go and see what they can do. Again, it doesn't matter. The results don't matter. How we play matters. How we play the game matters. Do we play attacking,
so what are the things
forward-thinking T20 cricket? Fantastic. If we play the old style stuff and we lose, then, go on. Yeah, what? What did you ask?
No, what do you want? So for us to, because obviously if we lose, what's the things you're going to be holding on to say, well, we lost, but these are the things that I was looking for. So you said attacking, batting, but what specifically in that? If
the guys go out there and play positive cricket. Now, I'm not talking reckless cricket. I'm just talking a positive approach. So, if we have it to be 50 for 3, and there's a half volley, I want the half volley to go out the ground for 6. I don't care that it's 50 for 3. I don't want that 50 for 3, that half volley on the leg stump, to be patted back to the bowler and build an innings. You don't build. Well, you hardly build it in a T20 cricket.
Cricket. So essentially what you're saying is this whole notion of South Africa attacks from over 15 and we try and preserve as many wickets to over 15 like we did last year, that needs to end. If we do that and we see that happening, then then we have to move forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. That's good. Okay. Cool, Tim. Thank you very much for joining. Remember, you can watch the game on Wednesday. It will be Wednesday afternoon or early evening here South African time. The Proteas take on India in their final preparation of the World Cup, so do watch out for that. Good luck to them for that. And that's the end of our podcast. Thank you very much for joining, Tim. And remember, you can follow us on the One World Sports Radio channel, as well as Facebook and Twitter, as well as you can also support us on Patreon at /1worldsr. And subscribe to that YouTube channel. Also, the audio versions of the podcast will be out as well. So do enjoy your day. Have a great week. Enjoy the cricket as we sign out. And all I can say is goodbye, good night, and Lesalo.